Long ago, before most galactic nations even learned to sail between the stars, there was a species called humans. They came from a small blue planet known as Earth, near an average yellow star. To many older civilizations, their rise had been sudden. In only a few short centuries, they went from burning coal to building ships that could bend space. For a time, they were loud. Their colonies grew across the nearest stars. Their signals filled the void. Their songs, speeches, and arguments echoed through open channels. They were explorers, dreamers, and sometimes destroyers, but they were alive and their presence could not be ignored. Then one day, the silence, no one could explain it. 1 century. Human colonies were active, trading, expanding, and then suddenly the entire network went dark. The colony lights winked out one after another, like stars fading at dawn. No distress calls, no debris, no explosions. Just an empty stillness where a living civilization had once been. At first, the galaxy waited. Some thought it was war among themselves. Others believed a plague had swept through their systems. But as years became decades and decades became centuries, the silence stretched too long. Exploration teams from other races finally dared to visit the abandoned systems. They found cities left standing but cold. Machines still ran in endless loops without anyone watching them. On Mars, a colony dome still glowed under artificial sunlight, but no footsteps marked the dust. A half-finished station orbited Jupiter, its construction robots frozen mid-task. There were no human bodies. No signs of panic or struggle, only absence. That was what disturbed everyone the most. It was as if the entire species had quietly stood up one day and walked out of the universe. In the records of the Galactic archives, the humans were eventually marked as extinct cause unknown. Their ruins became tourist sites for historians and scientists. Some even sold fragments of human technology on black markets, claiming their design was haunted. After a few thousand years, the curiosity faded too. The galaxy moved on. New powers rose, new wars began, and new alliances formed. Humanity's name became something mentioned only in history lectures. A mysterious, ambitious race that had burned brightly and vanished without a trace. But legends have a way of surviving longer than facts. Some old captains told stories of ghost signals detected in the deep void, old human frequencies repeating nonsense messages. Others spoke of entire ships disappearing near Sol, the dead star system where Earth once was. None of those stories were ever proven, but they kept the mystery alive. One historian from the Galactic archives once wrote, "Perhaps the humans did not die. Perhaps they learned something the rest of us are not yet ready to understand." Still, no one took it seriously. The galaxy had too many myths already. Then came the Age of Forgetting, 10,000 years after the silence began. By then, the universe had changed almost beyond recognition. Entire empires that once studied human ruins had crumbled. Planets had been reshaped. Species had evolved. The name Earth no longer appeared in any star charts. Even Sol, the human star, was labeled as an uninhabitable restricted system. Travelers were warned not to go there, not because of danger, but because of superstition. Ships that entered the zone never came back. The truth was, no one really cared anymore. Humanity was gone and the galaxy had learned to live without them. But the universe remembers in strange ways. One quiet night, in the distant Zaire fringe, a deep space observatory picked up an unusual signal. It came from beyond the edge of the mapped sectors where few dared to travel. The signal was faint, distorted, and old, very old. At first, the observatory crew thought it was background radiation or debris interference. But then one analyst noticed something unusual in the frequency pattern. The signal wasn't random. It repeated a specific rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. When they translated it through ancient databases, an alert triggered automatically, a match found in extinct archives. The code pattern was human. The analyst froze, staring at the data. A technology, dead for 20,000 years, was speaking again. Word spread quickly through scientific channels. Within hours, the Galactic Council summoned an emergency session. Representatives from more than 30 species gathered, their holograms flickering around a vast table. The question was simple but terrifying. What if humanity was not extinct? The Council authorized an expedition. A fleet of explorers, scientists, and historians was assembled. They were cautious but also curious. Some wanted to discover what really happened. Others wanted to ensure that whatever returned did not threaten them again. As the fleet prepared to enter the long-forbidden Sol system, the stars around them seemed unusually still. No movement, no radiation, no interference, just the quiet hum of the void. When the first ship crossed into the system, their instruments began to flicker. Sensors glitched, comms distorted, and every navigation system started showing strange readings, as if the space itself was being rewritten. Then, from the black horizon, something massive began to appear. At first, they thought it was an asteroid, but as light hit its surface, it reflected with metallic precision. It was a ship, but not like any they had ever seen. It drifted silently, unpowered, yet its form was whole, untouched by time. Its size dwarfed anything built by known civilizations. Its hull was seamless, without markings, and strange symbols ran along its side. Symbols that matched no known language but carried the mathematical rhythm of human design. The flagship commander ordered a scan, but the moment they did, every system in the fleet went offline. Power failed, lights dimmed, and only static filled the comms. Then slowly, a voice came through every speaker at once, clear, calm, and human. "You should not have come here." The words were ancient but understandable. The sound froze every living being in the fleet. It wasn't angry or threatening. It was simply, "Salta." The massive ship moved slightly, aligning itself with the fleet. No weapons were seen, no energy detected, yet the very space around it seemed to bend, as if gravity itself bowed in respect. Then, without warning, every ship in the fleet received a single transmission. It was short, one sentence encoded in every language at once. "Humanity returns." After that, the great vessel turned and vanished into the dark. No jump flash, no warp trail. It simply faded, leaving behind only silence and a faint electromagnetic echo that whispered through the void. Back at the Galactic Council, panic spread like wildfire. Some believed the humans had survived, evolving into something beyond understanding. Others feared they had become something entirely new, something that waited for a reason to return. The old historians were silent. One of them, the same who had once studied their ruins, whispered, "They never died. They just got tired of talking." And from that day on, across the galaxy in quiet control rooms and distant stations, sensors kept flickering, detecting something unseen. Old human signals, ghost ships in the dark, faint messages repeating through forgotten channels. The silence was no longer empty. It was waiting. And every being who heard those whispers felt the same cold thought forming in their minds, that somewhere, beyond the edge of known space, humanity had been watching all along. They had listened to the galaxy's noise for 20,000 years. Now they had something to say. For weeks after the phantom ship appeared and vanished, the galaxy could talk about nothing else. Every media outlet, every academic circle, and every major government debated what it meant. Some called it a trick, a fake created by rebels. Others were convinced it was a lost human artifact finally reactivating after thousands of years. But deep down, everyone felt the same chill. They all knew what they saw. The transmission was real. The words were clear. Humanity had spoken again. Across countless worlds, people gathered around holoscreens, replaying the message that had echoed across the stars. Humanity returns. It was only 2 words, but those words shook civilizations that had ruled unchallenged for ages. Many species had grown powerful in the absence of humans. Some had rewritten history to make themselves look like the galaxy's original explorers. But now, with a single signal, all those stories cracked. In the archives, old historians began reopening locked files. Dusty data drives, forgotten recordings, and fragments of ancient transmissions from the human era were pulled back into the light. Scientists began to study the strange energy that surrounded the phantom ship when it appeared. The readings were beyond explanation, not warp energy, not any known propulsion system. It was as if the ship simply moved through reality like a thought, not bound by space or time. Soon the Galactic Council called another meeting, this time behind closed doors. Only the highest leaders and scientists were invited. The mood inside was heavy. One of the oldest council members spoke first. He had lived long enough to remember the last expedition that entered human space 10,000 years ago. None of those ships ever came back. He warned them to leave the mystery alone. If humanity is returning, he said quietly, then it is by their choice. We should not look for them. But others disagreed. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, and it burned bright in the minds of those who ruled. Some saw opportunity. If they could find the humans before anyone else, they could gain power beyond imagination. If humans had developed technology that could move without engines, it would change the galaxy forever. And so a second mission was prepared, this time larger, more secretive. Fleets equipped with advanced stealth systems were sent toward the Sol system, ignoring the warnings and the stories of ships that never came back. For months they searched. The Sol system looked dead. No energy signatures, no communication signals, not even planetary activity. Earth was cold and quiet, covered in ice and dust. The moon was cracked, its surface scarred with what looked like ancient weapon fire. It felt like a tomb. But just as the fleet prepared to return, one of their scouts detected something faint. A ripple in the darkness and like a shadow moving behind the stars. When they adjusted their sensors, they saw it again. The same phantom ship drifting near the edge of the system. It was larger than before, or maybe the same one seen from closer now. It didn't seem to notice them, but as soon as they tried to scan it, all readings vanished. The ship was there, yet every device said it wasn't. Inside the fleet, panic started to grow. Some wanted to turn back immediately. Others demanded to follow it. But before they could decide, the phantom ship slowly turned its bow toward them, like a giant eye opening in the void. Then it moved. It didn't travel in a straight line. It simply appeared closer, first kilometers away, then meters. It was silent, smooth, and impossibly graceful. The crews aboard the fleet felt something strange, like a pulse inside their heads, a whisper that wasn't sound. It wasn't a message through comms. It was direct, a thought. You are not ready. Then came a flash, a silent burst of light so bright it seemed to swallow the stars. Every ship's systems shut down. When the light faded, the phantom ship was gone again. But this time something was left behind. A single small object floated in space, metallic and glowing faintly blue. The fleet recovered it and brought it aboard their flagship. It was a sphere and smooth and featureless until they placed it under the scanner. Then suddenly it opened. Inside the sphere was a single image, a living projection of Earth, not as it was now, but as it had been 20,000 years ago. Blue oceans, green lands, cities shining with light, and orbiting above it hundreds of ships, human ships, standing in perfect formation. Every crew member stared in silence. The image faded, replaced by another line of text written in the old human language. You forgot us. We did not forget you. The fleet returned to the council, terrified but also fascinated. The object was sealed inside a high-security lab, but its energy never stopped. It pulsed slowly like a heart. Rumors began to spread again. Some said the humans had never truly disappeared. They had gone into hiding, building their empire in another dimension or far beyond the galactic rim. Others whispered that they had transcended, becoming something beyond flesh and machine. Still, there were those who refused to believe any of it. It's just old tech reactivating, they said. A glitch in history. But deep down, no one could ignore the feeling that something ancient was waking up. Weeks passed. Then suddenly, across hundreds of systems, old human frequencies began to broadcast again. Signals coming from dead satellites, abandoned colonies, even museum artifacts. The messages were short and scattered, but they all said the same thing. We are returning. At first, many dismissed it as interference or sabotage. But when one of those satellites, which had been drifting powerless for millennia, turned itself toward a nearby star and reactivated its lights, the truth became undeniable. The galaxy realized it was not witnessing the return of a dead species. It was witnessing the return of watchers. Then came the sightings. Ships reported strange lights moving between systems, not warp trails but shadows crossing faster than light itself. Some miners claimed to see human figures standing on the surface of moons where no air existed. Scientists said it was impossible. Witnesses said it was real. And then something incredible happened. A signal stronger than any before was transmitted through every known communication channel across the galaxy. It bypassed encryption, ignored distance, and reached even the smallest listening devices. It was the same calm human voice that had spoken before. For 20,000 years, we listened to your noise. We watched you grow, fight, destroy, rebuild, and forget. But we remember. And now the silence ends. Every device, every screen, every ship received the message at the same moment. For a few seconds after it ended, the entire galaxy was completely still. No communication, no sound, no movement. Then chaos followed. Governments called for lockdowns. Religious groups declared the end of the age. Traders and miners fled outer sectors. Some believed the humans were returning to rule again. Others thought they had come to judge. But not everyone was afraid. Some saw hope. Humanity had once been known not just for war, but for curiosity and courage. Maybe their return meant something greater, something that would change everything once more. Deep in the silent reaches of space, in places beyond any map, something began to move. A fleet so large that it cast shadows across stars. Each vessel carried the same markings, the same design, and the same eerie glow. The phantom ship had not been alone. It had only been the first to wake. And as the first of those ancient ships began to glide through the black, a single message echoed again. Soft but clear, humanity returns. This time, no one dared to answer. When the message ended, the galaxy held its breath. Every world, every station, and every ship had heard it. The calm human voice that had spoken after 20,000 years of silence. It wasn't a threat. It wasn't a call for war. But somehow, it carried more power than 1,000 fleets combined. People felt it inside their minds, not as fear, but as something deeper, an awareness that the Watchers had truly returned. In the following weeks, strange events began across many systems. Old machines long broken and forgotten suddenly reactivated. Human-built satellites from the ancient days started orbiting again, transmitting coordinates written in languages most species had never even seen before. At first, no one could understand what the coordinates meant, but when a few explorers traced them, they discovered something unexpected, locations of worlds that didn't appear on any galactic map. When those places were scanned, faint energy signatures appeared, structures, cities, artificial lights deep underground. It was impossible. Humanity had not just vanished, they had hidden. The Galactic Council gathered again, their chambers filled with tension. Everyone talked at once, their voices overlapping, their expressions shifting between curiosity and panic. Some wanted to send fleets immediately, to uncover these hidden places. Others warned that doing so could wake something far greater than they could handle. Finally, after long arguments, they decided to send a small, peaceful team of explorers. No weapons, only science ships. Their task was to visit one of the coordinates and learn what they could. The chosen destination was an old, barren world in the outer rim, once listed as lifeless and covered in ice. It was known by its human name, Hera. When the team arrived, they found the planet silent and gray, its atmosphere cold and thin. But as they descended closer to the surface, their scanners began to pick up strange readings. Beneath the ice, something was alive, not biological but mechanical. A buried city. They landed near a large crater and began digging through the ice. What they uncovered made even the oldest scientists stare in disbelief. There was a massive structure perfectly preserved under the frozen layer. Its design was unmistakably human. Straight lines, metallic panels, familiar architecture. But it was far more advanced than anything known from the old human era. At its center stood a single tower that reached toward the surface. And on its peak, a faint light blinked in rhythm. The team approached carefully. When they got close enough, the light grew brighter and a doorway slowly opened by itself. Inside, they found long corridors glowing with soft white light. Everything looked new, untouched by time. There was no dust, no decay, no sign of life, but it felt alive. They found screens lining the walls, all displaying human text. The team's translators worked quickly, decoding words that repeated in cycles. Observation complete. Awaiting directive, human presence confirmed. It was then they realized the city wasn't abandoned. It had been waiting. As they explored deeper, the corridors led them to a vast chamber filled with strange pods, each one transparent and glowing faintly blue. Inside some of them, human shapes rested, perfectly still, preserved as if in deep sleep. Their faces looked calm, peaceful, untouched by age. No one spoke for a long time. One of the explorers whispered, They never died. Before anyone could react, the lights in the room flickered. A low hum filled the air. The pods began to pulse one by one like a heartbeat spreading across the entire structure. Then the same voice that had spoken across the galaxy echoed through the chamber. You have found what was meant to be forgotten. The team froze. The voice was gentle, calm, but it carried a weight that made their hearts pound. The room shifted slightly as if the entire structure was awakening from a long dream. The explorers felt vibrations beneath their feet, a deep movement rising from the planet's core. Outside, on the frozen surface, the ice began to crack. Bright lines of light spread outward from the crater, carving patterns that stretched for miles. The light grew stronger until the entire planet seemed to glow. From orbit, the rest of the fleet watched in silence as the planet below transformed. What once looked like dead ice now revealed giant circles of technology hidden beneath. The whole planet had been a shell, covering something vast and alive. Then, slowly, an enormous ship began to rise from beneath the surface, larger than any city, glowing with a silver-blue hue. It was ancient but flawless. The design matched the phantom ship seen before, but this one was even greater, surrounded by rings of energy that hummed with quiet power. The explorers were evacuated as the ship broke through the atmosphere. They barely escaped before it ascended into the blackness of space. Across the galaxy, detection systems everywhere came alive. The readings were impossible to measure. The ship's size and energy output exceeded anything known. And from that moment, something started happening across thousands of worlds. Human signals appeared everywhere, coordinated, timed perfectly, all transmitting in harmony. It was a silent awakening. World after world revealed more human structures buried beneath surfaces. Old outposts, hidden stations, vast fleets cloaked in invisible fields. No one had ever noticed them before. They had been there all along, sleeping, waiting for a signal to rise again. The Galactic Council was in chaos. Some called for diplomacy, others for preparation. Fear mixed with awe as everyone tried to understand what they were seeing. But no message came. Not yet. Humanity's fleet simply took position in the void, motionless, shining faintly like stars arranged in patterns. Soon, more discoveries followed. On abandoned stations once built by early explorers, they found messages carved into metal plates, old human languages translated by ancient programs. One of the messages said, "We left not because we were weak. We left because the noise was too loud. We wanted to listen to the stars without interruption." Another one read, "When the silence becomes unbearable, we will return to remind the galaxy what it means to be awake." These messages spread like wildfire, shared across billions of networks. People everywhere began to question everything they knew. Who were the humans now? What had they become in those endless ages of silence? Then, without warning, the phantom ship reappeared, not in one place, but in dozens of systems at once. Each one identical, each one carrying the same calm presence. The ships did not attack or invade. They simply positioned themselves near planets, observing quietly. Their lights pulsed like breathing. On some worlds, communication channels opened again. A short message appeared on every major network. "We are not your enemy. We remember you all." And with that, the fear began to shift into wonder. Across the galaxy, people began to realize that humanity had not returned for conquest. They had come for something else, something deeper. Some said it was to watch how far the galaxy had come without them. Others believed they were preparing for something that none of the current species could face alone. Whatever the truth was, one thing became clear. The silence had ended, and nothing would ever be the same again. The humans had been the first species to map the stars, the first to challenge the void, and now, after 20,000 years, they were back, wiser, stronger, and more mysterious than ever. In the dark of space, as one of the great phantom ships glided past a nearby moon, its hull reflected the stars in a perfect pattern, the same constellations that once shone over the skies of Earth. It was a quiet reminder of where it all began, and perhaps where it would all lead again. And somewhere, deep within that ship, a human voice whispered softly into the silence. Home was never lost. We were just waiting for the universe to be ready. The galaxy was no longer silent. Every corner of space was alive with whispers about the humans. The phantom ships floated quietly near hundreds of systems, unmoving but always present. No matter where one traveled, sooner or later, a glowing human vessel could be seen watching from the distance. never attacking, never communicating, just watching. At first, fear ruled. Many thought an invasion was coming, that one day those ships would open fire and destroy everything. But weeks passed and nothing happened. The ships just stayed where they were, steady as mountains in the dark. Then the questions began. Why had they returned? What were they waiting for? And most of all, how had they survived for 20,000 years when every trace of them had once vanished? The Galactic Council decided to act. They couldn't just sit and watch, so they created a new project called the Contact Initiative. It was made of diplomats, scientists, and translators, all working together to make peaceful contact with the returning humans. The first attempt took place near the world of Zera, where one phantom ship hovered quietly in orbit. The Council sent their best envoy vessel, unarmed, broadcasting peaceful greetings in hundreds of languages. The envoy approached slowly, keeping its weapons powered down. The phantom ship did not move. Its silver hull shone faintly under the nearby star. The envoy stopped at a respectful distance and began transmitting. Greetings from the Galactic Council, the message began. We come in peace. We wish to speak with humanity. For hours there was no answer. Then as the envoy prepared to turn back, a single light appeared on the phantom ship's surface. It blinked once, twice, 3 times, then stopped. The envoy systems recorded it. It wasn't random. The pattern matched an ancient human distress code, one that translated to a simple message. Wait. And so, they waited. Days passed. Then one night every system across the envoy ship shut down. The crew panicked, thinking they were under attack. But then slowly the lights came back on. On every screen a single line appeared. You are not the first to ask. You will not be the last to listen. The words faded, replaced by a new image, a star map, showing thousands of dots spread across the galaxy. Each dot represented a human ship, a colony, or a structure hidden for ages. They had been everywhere, silently growing in the shadows while the rest of the galaxy believed them extinct. The envoy's commander trembled. Humanity had not vanished. They had simply stepped out of sight. When the fleet returned, the council was divided. Some members were frightened. We cannot trust them, they argued. No one hides for 20,000 years without a reason. Others, however, believed humanity had come back as guardians, not conquerors. Across the galaxy, ordinary people watched the news with fascination. Many felt inspired rather than afraid. They admired humanity's patience, their mystery, their power to wait silently for millennia and then reappear without anger. It wasn't long before the second contact attempt was made. This time it wasn't from the council. It came from ordinary people. On a quiet mining colony near the edge of the spiral arm, a group of workers noticed a phantom ship hovering above their world. It wasn't threatening. It simply floated there, reflecting the light from the nearby star. The miners, curious and brave, decided to send a message of their own. They used an old human radio signal, one still taught in communication schools. They didn't say much, just a few simple words. If you can hear us, welcome home. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, the phantom ship began to glow brighter. A small beam of light extended downward, touching the ground near the colony's edge. The miners ran toward it, and what they saw left them speechless. The beam had formed a shape, a figure standing in the light. Human. It wasn't made of flesh and blood, but of soft energy, like a hologram. The face was calm, the eyes filled with quiet kindness. The miners stood frozen as the figure looked around as if remembering something. Then it spoke. The voice was gentle. You remember the signal, it said. That means you have not forgotten who we are. No one dared to respond. The figure smiled faintly. We were never gone. We were waiting for the galaxy to stop shouting. Before anyone could ask more, the light faded and the figure vanished. The phantom ship slowly moved away, disappearing into the darkness. The miners reported what they saw, and soon the entire galaxy heard about it. The image of the glowing figure spread across every network, every news station. People began calling them the Watchers. The council met again, this time more desperate for answers. But no one could understand what the humans wanted. They appeared in some systems, ignored others, and spoke only when they wished to. Their ships never attacked, yet their silence carried more power than any weapon. Scientists studied their technology. The energy they used did not match any known element or reactor system. It was clean, endless, and silent. The phantom ships didn't even produce heat. They seemed to exist halfway between matter and light, something not fully bound by physical law. More strange things followed. On worlds where humans had once lived, new growths of plants and forests began to appear overnight, as if nature itself had awakened. Abandoned cities showed signs of power returning to their grids, lights flickering in patterns that matched human heartbeat rhythms. It was as if humanity's presence had reawakened the worlds they once touched. But not everyone was at peace with their return. Some empires felt threatened. What if they decide to rule again? One leader said during a secret meeting, "They could erase us with a thought." Others believed humanity's silence was not out of superiority but sadness. They had seen too much of what the galaxy had become: endless wars, greed, and pride. Perhaps they had stayed away to avoid becoming part of that chaos. Then came the third message, the one that changed everything. It appeared suddenly, across every communication channel, without warning. A calm voice spoke once again, familiar and human. "We do not seek to rule. We seek to remind. You have all forgotten the promise you once made to build, not destroy. To listen, not shout. To grow, not consume." The message continued. "We watched as you fought for territory and pride. We saw the same mistakes we made before we vanished. That is why we left, to learn silence, to learn patience. And now we return to share what we learned." For a moment the galaxy was silent again. The message felt like a reflection of every mistake, every war, every selfish act committed across the stars. It wasn't a warning. It was truth, spoken by the species that had once been the most flawed and perhaps the most human of them all. After that day, something began to change. Fleets that were preparing for war stood down. Worlds that had once been rivals started speaking again. The return of humanity became more than a mystery. It became a lesson. In one system, a human ship descended and hovered above a massive capital world. A beam of soft light projected an image into the sky, Earth, shining bright and alive. Under it appeared simple words, "Remember who you were meant to be." Children and elders alike watched in silence. Some cried not out of fear but out of understanding. Humanity hadn't come back to conquer the galaxy. They had come back to hold up a mirror, to show everyone what they had become. Still, no one knew their full plan. The phantom ships remained silent, motionless, scattered like guardians across the void. But in their silence, a quiet peace began to grow in the galaxy. And though no one said it aloud, everyone knew the truth. The humans were not finished. Their return was only the beginning of something far greater. Somewhere, deep among the stars, beyond the reach of scanners and maps, the first great human city, built after the long silence, glowed once again. Towers reached into the sky and voices filled the air. It was not Earth, but it carried Earth's memory. Inside that city, humans walked once more, their eyes filled with both wisdom and sorrow. They had watched the galaxy destroy itself many times. Now perhaps they had come to heal it. One of them looked out over the horizon and whispered softly, "They are ready to listen now," and far above, the phantom ships pulsed with light, like 1,000 beating hearts answering in silence. The galaxy had begun to change. The return of humanity was no longer seen as a threat, but as something no one fully understood. The phantom ships still hovered near worlds and stations, but they did not harm or interfere. They simply watched, like quiet guardians who had seen too much of the past and were waiting for the right moment to speak again. Weeks turned into months. Some worlds tried to send gifts, food, art, messages of friendship, hoping the humans would reply. But nothing came back. The ships never opened their ports or used weapons. They just stayed, surrounded by a faint blue glow, silent and still. Then something new happened. Across a dozen systems, the stars began to shimmer differently. Observatories noticed strange energy waves moving in perfect patterns. It wasn't random and it wasn't natural. The signals carried rhythm, like a heartbeat. After analyzing it, scientists realized it was not just sound or light. It was data. Billions of lines of information being sent through space faster than any known communication system. And the source of it all was the phantom ships. The Galactic Council panicked at first, thinking it could be a prelude to war. But the waves caused no harm. In fact, everywhere they passed, broken satellites started working again. Communication systems repaired themselves, and even damaged ecosystems began to recover. It was as if humanity's return was repairing the galaxy itself. Soon after, a message appeared once more, simple, direct, and filled with calm purpose. We are returning what was lost. No one understood at first what it meant. But then, across abandoned planets, worlds destroyed long ago by wars, something began to happen. The ground started to glow faintly, and from the soil, structures began to rise. Old cities, long buried under ash and dust, were rebuilding themselves, but they weren't made of metal or concrete. The new structures looked alive, like crystal plants growing naturally into perfect shapes. Some said it was a mix of technology and life, something the humans had learned during their long absence. When scientists tried to approach these new cities, they discovered something shocking. The air around them carried faint human genetic signatures. It was as if the buildings themselves were partly alive, remembering the people who once lived there. The council sent observers to study the phenomenon. When one team entered a rebuilt dome on a quiet moon, they found the walls glowing softly with light. The patterns shifted and formed symbols. Slowly, those symbols turned into a projection, showing humans walking side by side with other species, sharing tools, sharing laughter, building worlds together. The projection was not a warning or a message of control. It was a reminder, a memory of what once was. The humans had not just disappeared. They had left behind knowledge, technology so advanced it could rebuild entire planets, heal ecosystems, and repair what war had broken. But it seemed they had decided to return only when the galaxy was ready to use that power wisely. The next message came from one of the largest phantom ships, a vessel so vast it looked like a moving moon. The voice that spoke was soft but carried through every communication channel in the galaxy. "You have rebuilt your empires," it said, "but you have forgotten how to build yourselves. You fight for borders while your worlds cry beneath your feet. We remember a time when creation mattered more than control. That is what we came to remind you of." The message continued. "We waited 20,000 years because silence teaches more than victory. We learned what power truly means, not destruction but balance. The galaxy is not a weapon, it is a garden, but you have let it wither." Across thousands of worlds the message was heard. Many people felt something deep within, not fear but reflection. It was as if the humans were speaking not to governments or armies but to hearts. For the first time in centuries, the galaxy felt united, not under rule, but under understanding. But there were still doubts. Some leaders believed humanity's return had a hidden motive. They argued that no species could be that patient or that powerful without wanting something in return. Others began to hope. Maybe the humans had come to guide them toward a better age. Soon after, small human exploration pods started landing on a few uninhabited worlds. They were empty. No people inside, just machines carrying messages written in every known language. Each pod carried one phrase: rebuild not for power, but for purpose. The pods also contained seeds, not just of plants, but of entire ecosystems. When planted, they grew rapidly, restoring life where none existed for centuries. Children on distant worlds watched these gardens bloom. People started to travel to those reborn places, calling them the renewal worlds. Slowly, hope began to replace fear. In one of those renewal zones, a young explorer discovered something incredible: a large transparent sphere buried deep underground. Inside it was a preserved recording from the ancient human era. The recording showed people building ships, laughing, sharing music, and speaking about a dream to bring balance between life and technology. The explorer brought the sphere back to the council, who released it publicly. Across the galaxy, everyone watched it. Humanity, thousands of years ago, had spoken of peace, not dominance. They had wanted to create something that lasted forever, not an empire, but harmony. The realization spread like fire. Humanity had not returned to reclaim the galaxy. They had returned to remind everyone that the galaxy had once been beautiful, and could be again. Then came another surprise. From deep space, a wave of light spread across every known sector. It passed through ships, planets, even living beings, but it did no harm. It carried only a feeling: warmth, clarity, peace. Scientists said it was a form of encoded consciousness, something beyond technology. After the wave passed, people began to notice changes. Some said they could sense empathy more clearly. Others felt connected, not through machines but through emotion. Wars that had been preparing for decades suddenly stopped. Leaders began to talk again instead of threaten. No one fully understood what the humans had done, but everyone could feel it. Something inside them had shifted. The phantom ships began to move again, this time toward the center of the galaxy. Billions of eyes watched as they gathered near a massive star system, one that no ship had ever entered before. It was said to be dangerous, filled with unstable gravity waves, but the human fleet entered calmly, as if they had been there many times before. Then a signal went out, the final message of that phase. It said, "We will open the heart of the galaxy once more. What you see will be your choice to follow, not our demand to lead." Moments later, the system that had been sealed for millennia began to shine. A new sun was born there, bright, pure, and peaceful. Around it, new worlds formed instantly, glowing like pearls. It was creation, right before everyone's eyes. The humans had done something no one thought possible. They had restarted a star system, a living symbol of renewal. The galaxy stood in awe. The council called it the return of light. But people everywhere called it something simpler: the gift. After that day, everything changed again. Trade between species became fairer. Research focused more on restoring rather than conquering. The phantom ships no longer seemed mysterious. They seemed protective, like caretakers of balance. Still, no one had seen a living human yet. Only their voices, their symbols, their actions. And that mystery only deepened the respect people felt for them. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, on a small moon covered in silver clouds, an old explorer once claimed to have seen something. He said he saw a group of human figures standing on a hill watching the stars. They looked peaceful, calm, and proud. When he tried to approach, they faded like light itself, leaving behind a simple mark carved into a stone. It read, "We never truly left. We were waiting for you to listen." And from that moment, everyone understood. The humans were not gods, not rulers, not ghosts. They were the memory of what it meant to be alive, to care, to build, to dream. The galaxy finally began to live with that idea, not fearing them, but learning from them. The silence that had lasted 20,000 years was finally broken, not by war, but by wisdom. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of known space, a single human voice whispered into the void, "Now they remember." The stars seemed to shine a little brighter after that. For a long time after the light returned to the center of the galaxy, the phantom ships stayed silent again. They floated quietly around the newborn star, their silver hulls glowing faintly like they were guarding something precious. Every species in the galaxy waited. The humans had changed everything. They had restored life, repaired broken worlds, and calmed ancient conflicts. But they had never shown themselves fully. No one knew where they truly were or what they were planning next. Weeks passed. Then one day, all across the galaxy, every human ship lit up at once. The light wasn't blinding. It was soft, warm, and peaceful. The same message appeared everywhere, from city screens to old radios. The silence ends now. And then, for the first time in 20,000 years, the humans spoke again, not through machines, but directly, as if their voices came from the stars themselves. "We waited because we needed you to see," the voice said gently. "To see that power without heart is hollow, that peace without purpose fades, and that creation means nothing without care." People listened in silence. Across thousands of worlds, everyone stopped what they were doing. Miners in tunnels, farmers in the fields, traders in stations all stared at the sky. The voice continued, "You asked where we went. We never left. We became part of what you could not yet understand. We built in silence, learned in darkness, and watched until the stars were ready again." At that moment, something incredible happened. From behind the newborn star at the galaxy's center, a massive structure began to appear. It wasn't a ship or a station. It was an entire world, glowing like glass and surrounded by rings of light. The scanners called it Solara. As it came into view, the phantom ships moved slowly toward it one by one, taking their place in orbit around the glowing world. Billions watched the event live, unable to believe their eyes. The voice returned. "This is where we have been," it said. Not gone, not hiding, growing, learning, healing. The world of Solara looked like no planet anyone had ever seen. From space, it shone with rivers of silver and forests of light. Massive structures reached into the sky like mountains made of glass, and oceans glowed softly in the dark. It was alive, and every part of it moving, breathing, existing as if it had a soul. The council immediately sent a delegation to approach, but as their ship neared, they received another message. "You do not need to come to us," the humans said, "because we are already among you." Then across the galaxy, holographic figures began to appear in cities and homes, not just on rich or advanced worlds, but everywhere. They were human in form, wearing simple clothing, their expressions calm and kind. People gathered around the figures in awe. One of them spoke. "We do not come to lead. We come to remind." The galaxy forgot what it means to belong to something greater than itself. Another figure continued. "You built walls between species, but you forgot that you all share the same sky. That sky is ours too, and we are here to open it again." Everywhere people listened. No armies were sent. No weapons were raised. The humans spoke softly, and somehow that was enough. They told stories and about the time before the silence, when humans traveled freely among the stars. They spoke of laughter, of cooperation, of building cities with others, not for control but for understanding. Then they explained why they left. "We saw what the galaxy had become," they said. "We saw wars fought for pride, not survival. We saw worlds burned in the name of order. We chose silence because sometimes silence is the only teacher that remains." They had not gone into hiding out of fear, but out of hope. Hope that after enough time, others would see what they could not. On one world, an old engineer looked at a human figure and asked, "Why return now? After all these years, what do you want from us?" The figure smiled. "Nothing. We only wish to give back what you forgot to keep. Balance." And then the humans revealed their true purpose. The light from Solara spread again, reaching every corner of the galaxy. It didn't burn or destroy, it connected. Worlds that had been separated by distance suddenly shared communication instantly. People could speak to each other without delay, no matter how far apart they were. It was like the entire galaxy had become one living network, bound by empathy and understanding rather than wires and machines. They called it the lattice. It wasn't technology in the way people understood it. It was alive, built from the same energy that powered the phantom ships. Every species could access it, not with devices, but with thought. And through the lattice, people began to see one another differently. They could sense emotion, see memories, feel understanding. It didn't erase individuality. It simply reminded everyone that they were part of something greater. The galaxy started to change faster than anyone could have predicted. Old conflicts dissolved, trade became fair, and shared knowledge began to grow. The phantom ships still moved through the stars, but now they were seen as symbols of peace. Yet even then, the humans remained humble. They didn't claim credit or authority. They said only one thing: "We are not gods. We are your reflection." The words stayed with everyone. People realized that what made humanity powerful wasn't their ships or their light, or their silence. It was their heart. Then came the final message. It appeared across the stars one last time, a voice filled with both warmth and farewell. "The galaxy has found its voice again. Our purpose here is done. We will go beyond the veil once more. Not to hide, but to continue creating. When the stars begin to fade again, we will return. Until then, remember this: strength without kindness is hollow, and silence without learning is wasted." After that, the phantom ships began to rise slowly toward the edge of known space. Billions watched as they formed a perfect line, each glowing brighter until they became streaks of light moving into the darkness. And just like that, they were gone. But the world they left behind, Solara, stayed. It became a place of peace, a shared home for all species, where they could learn from the wisdom humanity had passed down. No one ruled it, but everyone was welcome there. For generations, people would travel to Solara to stand under its glowing sky and listen to the hum of energy beneath its surface, the quiet echo of human voices whispering through time. Some said that, at night when the air was still, you could hear a faint heartbeat coming from the world's core, the sound of humanity's memory, still alive. And sometimes a bright silver light would appear in the sky, moving gently among the stars, as if one phantom ship still lingered, watching, protecting, waiting for the next dawn. Children across the galaxy grew up hearing stories of the humans, not as warriors or rulers, but as the ones who brought back hope. Songs were written about them, and murals painted on city walls showing ships crossing the dark sky, their light guiding lost travelers home. Years passed into centuries, but the feeling never faded. Humanity's return had changed something permanent inside everyone. The belief that creation, compassion, and patience could outlast even the longest silence. One day, deep in the archives of Solara, a scholar discovered a message hidden beneath layers of light code. It was short and simple, written in an old human dialect. It said, "If you ever forget who you are, look up. The stars will remind you. They always do." And that became the final truth of the galaxy, that the silence of 20,000 years had not been a curse but a gift. Humanity's quiet had taught everyone how to listen again. In the end, they had not returned to lead or rule. They had returned to teach. To show that true power lies not in noise but in understanding. And as the galaxy spun slowly under the endless sky, every living being could feel it. The humans were still out there, somewhere building, dreaming, watching, because silence was never the end of their story.